The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Hog Sty podcast. Here with us today, I have two good friends. One good friend is missing, but we know who that is, and he shall go unnamed. How are you guys doing today, Mr. Alex and Steve?
I'm good. By virtue of elimination, Sean is not here.
Right. Well, where's Waldo? We should just get Sean a red striped shirt.
Look, what you should do, what we should do is ask the listeners to. So Scott Van Pelt does Where's Scott SVP on Twitter, and a lot of people take pictures of people that look like Scott, who's not him. If you guys see Sean and you believe that's Sean, if he has a picture, I don't think he has a picture online. So it's gonna be hard to.
No, he has a picture on our website.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I was making sure. If you guys see Sean, please let us know where he at, because we have no clue. We have absolutely no clue.
You might know more. If you see him, you know more about him than we do.
Yeah, actually, and I want you to actually take him into custody, or detain him. Not take him into custody, but detain him so he can actually make the show on Saturdays. That's very important.
I mean, unfortunately, if you're not a cop, that's called kidnapping. But we'll bail you out or something.
Yeah, just let the
Technically,
cops know.
even if you are a cop, you can still kidnap people.
Yeah, just let the cops know, like you're doing. It's for a good purpose. They'll understand.
It's for a reason.
But,
back up! I'm doing it for a podcast.
Exactly. Have the papers and signing. We have our signatures on it, and we're going to forward Sean's signature. We'll be okay. All right. But no, how are you guys doing today? I know, Alex, you're dealing with this DC quote unquote heat wave that some people around the country are actually kind of used to this weather, but I know you're dealing with the heat wave.
I don't think anyone gets used to what we're getting.
But Arizona, I just think about Arizona when I say things like that, like the Southwest.
But Arizona's a dry heat.
Yeah, that's true. Because this humidity is insane.
I mean,
Steve, to answer your question, it's supposed to get to like 105, 110 today.
Oh, that's pretty hot. I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in South Texas, so it's more humid here than there, but that's pretty hot. I mean, 105,
yeah,
that's
it's
hot.
never, like, you never get used to that. I don't care where you live.
I spent time in the Middle East, though. It's freaking hot there, but it's very dry heat there.
I've visited the Middle East briefly. It's not fun.
Okay, yeah, I'm about to say, I actually have to, I don't know about you, Alex, but I have to step outside today. I'll probably be outside for a good while. And my plan is, first of all, I got to find some sunscreen. Because truth be told, I haven't worn sunscreen at all this entire summer. I have done I do it for my face, but for my body, I have moisturizer.
Right.
So today will be sunscreen.
No, I'm still a bit distressed over my Lakers, and so my mind's a bit off kilter because Anthony Davis was interviewed this week and did not commit automatically to a long-term contract in LA, which that distressed me.
Well, what'd you expect?
Quite a bit.
The Lakers
it's
suck.
the
They're
NBA,
not
man.
good.
No one wants long-term.
The Lakers are the best team in the West by far, and you would think that Anthony Davis would go, "Yeah, I want to be here. We'll get it done." Instead, he kind of hemmed and hawed about it. And listen, Jamal, I will deed you my house if the Lakers aren't better than the Clippers.
Oh, man.
You heard it here first.
Then the Clippers, that might be doable.
This is hilarious.
Yeah.
How do we measure success? Are we measuring it by postseason success, or are we measuring it by regular season wins? Because we know one weighs more than the other.
Both.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I know you got a little fancy house over there, so I don't mind moving to Texas. Oh man. But
and the fact that I offered to deed you my house in no way means I'm going to actually deed you my house, but just for the record, not willing to go that far in the bet, but I think there is 0.0% chance that the Clippers will be better than the Lakers in 2019.
Not even 0.1%.
Zero.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody,
zero.
look. This is. Well, I was gone last week, but this is 2 times in 3 weeks where we've heard such bold statements by Steve and his Lakers. So everybody that's listening,
number one team in the West.
All right. We know that this guy is putting his foot in his mouth, and it's okay. It's okay. So
Right.
let's go ahead and get with this show. You guys brought something up to my attention before the show happened that somebody had an idiot thief moment. A former Redskin. He wasn't the thief, but he was a victim of the idiot thief, and got caught. So, Alex or Steve, it doesn't matter. One of you guys want to take this in and let everybody know what happened to our guy?
I have the story. And so the player we're talking about is one of the legends from the 80s Gibbs era, and that's Mark May, 2-time Super Bowl champion. He was at some kind of event in Arizona where, when these guys go to these big high-profile events, you wear the ring. And because people want to see the ring, you let people try on the ring. That's kind of like the shtick that every Super Bowl player does.
Right.
So he brought both his Super Bowl rings. He had some fancy jewelry and watches and all that kind of stuff. Like, people with the money can dress like that. Not me. I don't have that kind of money. But guys like him, they do that. He gets home from his trip to Arizona and realizes he doesn't have his rings or his watches or some other stuff, I guess. And it's not clear from the story, did he just forget that he put everything in the safe in the hotel, or did it disappear from the safe beforehand? But regardless, the stuff was left in Arizona, and a employee from the hotel, air quote, found it.
Uh-huh.
And decided, hey, you know what I should do with these 2 Super Bowl rings I've found is try and pawn them. Now, look, we've all found things in our life. The best thing I ever found was I found $150 cash on a seat in a subway.
Wow.
Which
cash, huh?
That's a nice day.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, it was
Jamal's
actually the subway up when I was up in college in Philly.
Jamal's going to go and ride some subways.
Right, I'm about to say, let me look out for some irresponsible individuals.
But that's finding money, and when you find money, you can't do anything with it. A Super Bowl ring, he's going to try and pawn it off.
You know what I wouldn't do if I found a Super Bowl ring? I wouldn't pawn it.
I don't know what I'd do if I found a Super Bowl ring.
I would. I'd know exactly what I would do because the Super Bowl rings have names on them, or at least jersey numbers. I would probably call the player or call the team and tell them I had found the ring.
That's probably a smart move.
Yeah.
And yes, these both say May on the side, both rings. But he doesn't just decide to pawn it off willy-nilly at hey, let me go to the corner pawn shop where I might know a guy who will do a backroom deal. Which, by the way, not as common in pawn shops as we like to pretend. But, that is a thing that, it's stereotyped in movies and stuff like that. No, he went to probably the most famous pawn shop in America. He went to the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, which is the location of the show Pawn Stars that's been on TV for, 10 years?
Oh,
You guys know Pawn Stars, right?
Yeah,
I've never watched it.
The big fat family and Chumley and, the old man, that guy.
You never watched it, Jamal? It's a good show.
No, I never watched it.
Well, number one, the old man died, and then
he's gone
2,
now.
the fat stupid kid Chumley got in trouble
he went
for
to jail for meth or something, right?
Yeah, or something, crystal meth, or
yeah, some drug problem he had. I remember that.
Yeah.
But okay, so the gist of the show, Jamal, is they own a pawn shop that is very high profile. People bring in fancy, things they want to either pawn or sell, and then they go through the history of that item. So it's like, I brought in my Civil War sword. Well, this Civil War sword belonged to such and such colonel who fought at this battle. It's on the History Channel. It's a good show.
Okay.
And then they bid, and then they go back and forth to try and negotiate a price for it.
And so this guy goes in and tries to pawn Mark May's 2 Super Bowl rings, and so naturally I would assume they ask him, well, how did you get Mark May's Super Bowl rings? And you have to say, well, he gave them to me. I don't know what you say to
and
that.
that's where the issue comes in. He claims he was given them or he bought them at an auction or something.
Yeah, he had both of them.
Right. Now, you can make an argument for one and try and convince the buyer, but if you got 2, and who in the hell is going to give you 2 of their Super Bowl rings and say, here, you can have them?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Well,
Well,
I think it's safe to say I know a lot about law enforcement and prosecution and stuff, generally speaking, probably more than 99% of the public. And I learned something about the police from. I'm starting to watch the show The Wire on HBO from years ago.
Right.
I finally started watching, and I learned that at least the Baltimore Police Department has a pawn shop unit. I never knew that. And so, if you watch The Wire, Lester Freeman's character worked in the pawn unit where he would investigate stolen items, in pawn shops. I just can't imagine any pawn shop would be stupid enough to take a ring like that without reporting it to the police. Certainly not the Pawn Star guys who are very high-profile public figures.
Right,
It's just
and
crazy.
they're high-profile where they also know, hey, we can call Mark May. We have his contact info, just
Somehow.
sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's how prideful. That's how they figured out that this guy had stolen it. They literally contacted somebody who contacted him, and he was like, "Oh no, that's been missing."
Yeah.
It's just, crazy. I think the same thing happened to Dexter Manley's ring at one point in time.
Did he?
Yeah, I think Dexter in the middle of his drug addiction, because now he's a recovering addict, but when he was in the midst of his addiction, he either tried to pawn it or it got stolen. Somehow he lost control of his ring, and then a very high-profile attorney in the Houston area, who's now dead, got a hold of the ring and kept it. And kept it until Dexter got clean and was able to take his ring, for himself. Which
Now
is a good
I know
story.
Rippon recently sold his first Super Bowl ring from the '88 season or '87
Well,
season.
and that's his choice, but that's
right.
fine.
Well, and he was a backup, so he's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I didn't play.
And he was the quarterback of maybe, certainly one of the top 5 all-time greatest teams in NFL
Right.
history.
He's
so.
keeping that one.
I don't know. I don't think you ever gonna get me to sell my rings. I don't care if I started
No.
or if I was on the bench and I played like 2 minutes all season. I'm not selling no ring.
No, I probably
Not
wouldn't
doing
either.
it.
I mean, the moral of the story, boys and girls, is if you find Super Bowl rings, don't pawn them because you're
Right.
not going to get away with it. And the right thing to do is to call the team and tell them you have them and let them contact the player. That's the right thing to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. That I would argue that was
You
that's
can
probably the
find
smart
any
move.
team switchboard number, if you just Google it.
Right.
That's public. So do that. Don't go to the Pawn Star guy, especially not the Pawn Star guy.
No, again, there are probably seedy pawn shops in Arizona he could have gone to, but he decided to go to the Pawn Star.
But then
guy.
you're going to get Lester Freeman on you, and it's not going to work out for you.
I know. And again, my grandfather ran a pawn shop. My great grandfather ran a pawn shop. So that's not as common as people think.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're out
Yeah.
there.
All right. So appreciate the people in Las Vegas for helping out Mark May and finding his Super Bowl rings. I don't know if they found the rest of it.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
But good for them and good to hear about Mark. Now we have something of yours, Alex, that we need to discuss. You
Okay.
brought up.
Is this an intervention?
No, it is not an intervention. We are not upset or distraught or fearing for potential potential health problems down the road. You're doing well for as far as we know. But no, you did or you're previewing something that I'm pretty interested in about because the narrative in which started your article is something that we need to really look into. So I'll stop talking in vague and I'll let you go ahead and expand or expound upon what it is that you talked about with the Redskins draft success.
Okay, so I'll expand and expound at the same time.
Whatever
So
word it is.
the origins of this article, it's like a lot of the stuff I write. Somebody suggests something on our website, and I'm like, hey, that would make a good story, and I just write about it. Because I don't want to come up with original ideas. I'll just steal them from our commenters or
it's
people on
motivation,
Twitter.
it's insight. It helps you develop your thoughts first.
Exactly. So what happened was earlier this week, Warren Sharp, who's from sharpfootballanalysis.com, and he goes on radio shows and podcasts and things like that to talk about football analytics. He put out this tweet kind of knocking the Redskins' lack of success when it comes to the NFL draft, specifically the last, I guess 8 years you would say. But he focused on 2010 to 2015 which would be Bruce Allen's tenure here, and he drafted 52 players, only 18 are left in the league from that span, and the Redskins only re-signed 7 of them. And, so those numbers, when you hear them, don't sound very good for a good 5-year span. That's not how you build a successful football team, right?
62% of those players are either not with the Redskins or not in the league. So yeah, it does not sound good.
It's not good at all. It's actually, I think it's even more than 62%. But anyway, I was asked online by somebody, hey, how does this compare really with the rest of the league? Because we've all talked about this before. We want to see the Redskins draft better, re-sign their players, and build through the draft, right? That's what every fan wants. So I ended up saying, all right, let me take a look at some of these other teams. I'm not going to look at all 31 teams. I don't have that time. But I looked at the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Giants.
You may talk me into doing it one of these days if I'm bored.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe I should look at some of the playoff teams at some point,
It's a perfect
Don't look at the Patriots, because we all know the Patriots are weird, right?
I'm usually the one that's willing to sit for it. No, they don't. I'm usually the one that's sitting willing to... I'm usually the one that's sitting willing to count draft picks for an entire weekend, for the sake of a column.
Right. I mean, doing 3 teams isn't too bad. I got that done in about an hour and a half looking at these. So here was the interesting thing. The numbers I gave you for the Redskins, 52 picks, 7 were re-signed after their rookie deal. That's a 13.5% success rate. 18 are still in the NFL, so that's 34.5% of your picks were at least NFL caliber players from that span. It's really not that different from the rest of the NFC East. In fact, we're probably the second best team in the East, maybe third, depending on what you want to look at, because we're more or less tied with the Eagles. The Eagles had 54 picks, 7 were re-signed, so exact same number of guys who they've kept on their team, and 2 are on their second deal now, or third deal, however you want to say that. And they have had 20 guys still in the NFL. So, almost identical numbers across the board. You know
what the problem is? I think the draft obviously is a crapshoot, and the Redskins are more or less in the ballpark, I think, of everybody else, right? I don't think they're going to be 32.
They're middle of the pack, I think is going to be a safe guess.
So what I believe, like I said to you guys when we were talking about this initially, I had messaged Warren, because one of my things, so a lot of Redskins fans, when I came across this initially, they felt that he was taken out of context. But contextually, everything that was in his criteria was there in this chart. There's nothing you can really argue about what he valued outside of what's in the chart. 2010 to 2015. The reason why it stops at 2015 is for the obvious. Rookie contracts only go 4 to 5 years, depending on which year you're drafted.
Right. So anyone drafted 2016 isn't off the rookie deal yet.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter after 2015. So, with that being said, you have to figure out, because the way he announced his information with his chart and his tweet that followed, a lot of exaggerations and wows and all that type of thing. And so you have to ask him. I DM'd him. And for the record, he did not respond, which makes sense on his case because what Alex just pointed to and what Steve just alluded to is probably the NFL average. And the Redskins are comparatively ranked amongst the same teams in the NFC East. I asked him, do you have any data that's comparative to see where the Redskins rank amongst NFL teams or even people in the NFC East? 2 days went by.
Right.
Which is
why I kind of did this.
2 days or 3 days went by, no response, which makes sense because he didn't even put any other teams up there after he put that tweet out there. It was only the Redskins.
Right.
So, his argument may have been a little his argument may have been a little slanted, or he probably just didn't do further research, and that was his first team.
This is the classic thing that sports writers do. Let's throw data out there without any context at all. It sounds like Warren Sharp. I don't know Warren Sharp from Adam. We've never been on the show.
Yeah,
We've never talked to him.
I've followed him on Twitter forever just because I like following analytics guys, but I don't really know him.
And after this, he's never going to be on the show. But it sounds like, frankly, he had an agenda, to make the Redskins look bad, and so let's throw this data out there. When the truth of the matter is, by just raw numbers like what Alex showed, we're kind of in the middle of the pack. The problem with the Redskins, really and truly, going back years and years and years, is stemmed from the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you want to point to one thing, forget Dan Snyder and blah blah blah, all that stuff. If you really want to point to one thing, it's that they cannot get the quarterback right. And so while 13.5% we've hit on, I'd be willing to gamble that's in the ballpark of at least of other NFL teams.
So let me give you the other two teams in the East, just to give you the full context. Cowboys, they're the best when it comes to drafting in the NFC East. 45 picks in that span. They've re-signed 10 of those picks over the course of that span. One thing to note, 2 of those 10 are no longer with the team at this point. Des Bryant and one of their corners. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head.
No, he was. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, Mo Claiborne. Yeah, he's at the Jets now. So, but that's still, so that's 22% that they're drafting and keeping. And about half of their guys are still in the NFL that they've drafted. So that's probably the best of the East and where better teams would be draft-wise, getting to about 50% success rate in terms of,
it depends on what you're calling a success rate.
Well, I think if you draft a guy and he stays in the NFL, even if he's not on your team, I would say it's a successful pick. Keeping him on your team, you can't always keep a guy,
Yeah, I mean, my kind of general rule of thumb with this stuff is if we can keep 1 or 2 draft picks a year out of the 7, on average we have, I think that's successful.
Well, okay, so the Redskins almost universally only keep 1 a year. That's like,
but one that you hit on that's good, that kind of becomes a long-term player. If you can find 1, maybe 2 of those a year, to me, you're doing well.
I think you need to get to the 2 more often than not.
Yeah. But the main problem, like I said, it's not overall. It's that they cannot find a quarterback. And now we have Dwayne Haskins. We'll get to Dwayne. Yeah.
I was going to say, in addition to what you were saying, also, you got to think about who. Well, 2011 was Ryan Kerrigan, so that makes sense. But in addition to these other players, like, who on earth are you re-signing? Who's worth re-signing? And that's not necessarily to say that these guys were bad. For example, Jamison Crowder had 4 good years. Does that mean because you don't re-sign him, like you're doomed if you're drafted to the Redskins? No, you weren't. No. It's not necessarily saying. I mean, it's more so the strength that you were not, and it's not a bad thing. You can thrive elsewhere, but you were not a key, like undoubtedly, we have to re-sign this guy because we're not going to overpay for you when somebody else can. And there's a lot of things that goes into these numbers when you argue from a positive perspective or a negative perspective. You have to take a lot of things into account, and sometimes the numbers don't. For Warren's argument, sometimes the numbers just do not always tell the whole exact story.
Well, so the Crowder thing brings up a larger point, and to not get too sidetracked on it, but the real key to success when it comes to retaining talent, it's not letting guys get to that final year of their rookie season like Crowder did, like we saw with Spencer Long.
Like Brandon Scherff is about to do.
Yeah,
I agree.
Brandon Scherff is about to do. So you want to get these guys re-signed in that 3rd year like we did with Ioannidis. That one, it saves you a ton of money, usually, if you do that, because they're willing to take, hey, I'm making $400,000 or whatever they're making on the rookie deal. Yeah, but you got to
understand something, though. Like, when you talk about top-end players like Brandon Scherff, they might not be dumb. They're not dumb enough to do that because it's going to cost them money. Like, in the case of a guy like Jamison Crowder, I mean, the Redskins found a player. What was he? 4th-round draft pick, I think.
4th-round draft pick. Yeah,
from out of Duke. I mean, they found a guy who you wouldn't necessarily think it coming out of college, but he's a legit quality NFL player. And the Redskins didn't sign him because he got a bigger deal elsewhere.
Exactly. I think they're not going to compete to overpay that man, knowing the restrictions that they have here. Like, why would you pay that?
I mean, like Lorenzo Alexander is a guy who I think we all universally regret losing, but he got a big deal elsewhere. He got a really big. He
only got like $3 million a year.
Yeah, but back then, I'm not saying they made a financial decision on him. Okay. Right. I would have re-signed him. Sometimes that's why these players leave. Like Spencer Long, at least doesn't, we thought at the time, doesn't suck, right?
Yeah.
And he got a really big deal elsewhere. So I think that's a big part of it. But just when it comes to the Redskins, I don't think we're having any of these discussions if they found a quarterback a long time ago. If Robert Griffin had worked out,
absolutely, yeah.
It'd be a different story. If they had kept Brad Johnson back in the 90s for 4 or 5 seasons, it would have worked out. If they hadn't brought John Beck in, there's a whole host of things. Yeah, well,
I would argue if they had kept Kirk rather than the whole
I don't
weird,
know, man. Kirk's just,
franchise tag thing.
I mean, I wrote 3 very long articles.
We talked that to death.
Yeah, we talked that to death.
I don't want to get into sidetrack with it.
So I think, and I did my draft analysis, article a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, not a year. I think it was last year. And what it really showed was that Bruce has been pretty decent, draft pick wise.
But they're very in the middle of the pack. So let me give you the last one just to finish this off.
Yeah, Giants.
It makes us all feel great about ourselves to finish on a hey, you know who sucks note. Because want to know who sucks at drafting? Like, way sucks.
I'm guessing
it's the Giants.
Yeah.
The Giants may be the worst team when it comes to drafting over that 5-year span. And I would bet they're the worst in the NFL. Because they had 42 picks. They only re-signed 2 of them, of those 42.
Hey. Traded Odell.
Those 2 players are Odell Beckham and Jason Pierre-Paul.
And they traded both of them. That's the crazy thing.
They traded both of them 1 year after re-signing them. So, and only 11% or 11 guys of those 42 are still in the league.
I don't know. I mean, I think certainly the Giants drafting has put them in the position they're in, right? Because the Giants have really sucked. And part of the reason is they've drafted guys like Eric Flowers and not just expected him to come in and compete at guard. They stuck him at left tackle. They didn't replace Eli Manning when they should. They let Odell Beckham Jr. go for no reason. One of the best receivers in the NFL. One of their few draft successes. What do? They let him go to Cleveland.
Well, they traded him.
Or traded him, but still.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in the case of the Giants, I think their poor front office and poor draft choices have a direct impact on their poor record. The Redskins, I don't think, have been that poor in drafting in recent years. It's just been a host of other things that have caused them to be mediocre /
in addition to the inability to first surround Kirk with a good defense, and then secondly, effectively replace him, as opposed to just going out there and trying to get a win-now quarterback who possibly doesn't fit your system, and has proven that in his first year for the first 9 games. Your offense was severely limited, but look, we're not going to get into that. We know.
No, that's a whole other thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to reading that post, and I'm actually looking forward to using that against Warren Sharp, who ignored my respective direct messaging to understand the context of his data. So it will be used against you if you're listening to this, buddy.
Well, so my bigger final point, just like when I was kind of done looking at the data, this is just the nature of the NFL, too. We as fans don't necessarily like this aspect, and we don't want to talk about it. But if you're drafted by a team, that whole, hey, you'll probably be in the league for 4 years, that still holds true. Most of these guys are done after 3-4 seasons. And, when you talk about the best hit rate of those 4 teams I looked at is 45% of the guys are still in the league.
The draft's a crapshoot, man.
It's not just a crapshoot. It's a guys get hurt situation. There's a lot of luck involved in guys staying healthy, all that kind of stuff.
Look,
too.
I mean, the Redskins drafted Andre Johnson in 94 maybe.
Yeah.
The first round draft pick, left tackle, he busted out of the league in a year. The Patriots draft Tom Brady in round 6, and he's the greatest quarterback in NFL history and a surefire Hall of Famer. I mean, it's just you never know. And a lot of times I think casual fans, because like Jamal and I have watched a lot of film recently, and watching a lot of film, what I really realize is college success in college is really dependent on a lot of things. It's success in college translating to the NFL is depending on a lot of things. The scheme you play in college matters a lot. The competition you play against in college matters a lot. there's a lot of factors go into it, and how the team uses you matters a lot. We're going to get to Cam Sims in a minute, here later in the show. Alabama misused Cam Sims. He didn't get drafted as a result. Whereas, like Ari Kwanjo, former Redskin Ari Kwanjo, played at Alabama, got drafted probably higher than he should have because he was a lineman at Alabama. There's a lot of things that go into it, whereas I think if coaches and scouts were able to take just a flat-out, unbiased look at things, which I think probably most don't because they're human and they have their biases, I think you would see the draft a lot differently. I think there's probably very few people who are so able to do that in such a way that they're truly free of bias.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, I don't even know if it's bias. I think that there's just so many unknowns that they can't calculate. Too, like there's no way you could be that omnipotent as a evaluator.
Well, like looking back on it, just think about this. Yeah, of course. I mean, looking back on it, we drafted Robert Griffin in 2011. Well, I mean, I was very excited about him at the time, as were we all. But if you look back and think about it, well, we had a guy who's a runner first, who didn't have a playbook at Baylor, who ran a very simplistic version of the spread offense, and came with a bunch of baggage in the form of people around him.
Right, and he played against a lot of lesser competition. And he played in the Big
12, and so all those things. Well, maybe
and
you know what?
Stud receivers.
Maybe we should have known. Right. Maybe we should have known.
Yeah.
I mean, just as I don't mean to bash Robert Griffin, it's just an example. Maybe what you do in the draft is you take the sure bet. Take that quarterback who played in a pro-style system. Take Lamar Jackson, who's known as a runner, but played in a pro-style system under an NFL coach at Louisville. Maybe he's a surer bet than a guy like Robert Griffin.
I mean, maybe you're even better looking at guys who don't play on elite teams and looking for the cream of the bottom rather than the cream on the top.
Exactly.
All right. Great discussion. I said discussion. I don't know. I think my mouth is dry. Discussion.
That's all right.
Yeah. So with that being said, you mentioned Cam Sims, Steve, and we're going to go ahead and get into this wide receiver position group breakdown. First things first is the poll. I would say weekly, but sometimes we have missed a few.
Hey, I've only missed one, man.
There is nobody at fault for the missing of the poll. But
no, it was my fault. No. It was my fault. But in my defense, it was the 4th of July. It was the one I missed. So.
All right, yeah, that's that. So we have a poll. Let's hear the poll.
Jamal's subtly throwing shade at me for missing the one poll.
Not at all. I am not throwing shade at all. But we do have a poll, and we're going to go ahead and get into it for the.
Yeah, let's talk about the poll because I think it was an interesting poll.
Right, do we have comments too?
Yeah, we got a
lot of comments.
A ton of comments. Yeah. Okay, so the poll this week was: which Redskins wide receiver do you think has the best chance for a breakout season? Now, for those of you not familiar with Twitter limits you to only 4 choices. So we went back and forth a little bit about who to pick on this because, truth of the matter is, there would probably be maybe 7 choices. But what we went with is Josh Doxson, Trey Quinn, Paul Richardson, and other. And the other primarily Kelvin Harmon, Terry McLaurin, Cam Sims were the 3 sort of big others.
Right.
But we have a bunch of other guys on the roster too.
Because there's Davis, there's the other Sims.
Steven Sims. We'll get to all of them. But those, but Doxson, Quinn, and Richardson and other is who we finally went with here.
Right.
So, well, as we always do, we're going to try to guess what the public thinks. I'm not going to guess because I know the answer. Alex and Jamal are going to try to guess what the public thought about this and then what they think. So let's start with Jamal this week. Jamal, what do you think?
I am going to go. For my vote, I'm going to go other. I'm going to say Cam Sims. The fans who voted, I think they're going to say. Well, I don't think they have that much faith in Paul Richardson, so I will say. Excuse me. Was it Trey Quinn or Terry McLaurin that was the third choice?
Trey Quinn is the third choice.
Trey Quinn.
Right.
Okay.
I'm with you that I actually am an other guy. I would either say it's either gonna be McLaurin or Cam Sims, who kind of has that breakout year for us. I'm really high on both those guys. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, there was that weird Trey Quinn, Mr. Irrelevant cult thing that happened last year.
It was unsufferable.
I think that probably, yeah. you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think those people. And here's what I do know: Doxson's the last vote. That's the one thing I'm sure of. Doxson got maybe, I'm guessing, single digits.
Okay. Well, Trey Quinn ran away at this poll.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, 55% of you out there.
Just
yeah.
like he runs away from defenders.
Well, we don't know that because he was hurt all year. We don't know anything. And Paul Richardson was second place and with 17%. The ubiquitous other was 17%, and Josh Doxson was last, but not by as much as you thought. He had 11%.
Really?
Yeah, that's the poll. Yeah, for me, I went back and forth on this as to who I didn't vote, but who I would vote for. And I think really at the end of the day, I'd probably go with Paul Richardson. He's the big money guy.
Sure.
He's the surefire starter. Trey Quinn has become, like Jay Gruden's, newfound son. Like Ryan Grant grew up and went to college and moved away, and so Trey Quinn has become the new guy. And he's definitely going to start in the slot. He's been gifted the slot position, but I
he's
think
really only draft pick at least that fits that mold.
I can make an argument for others, but we'll get to there. But point is, I think Richardson is the guy that he has something to prove. He needs to live up to the contract. Josh Doxson has something to prove. I just don't think he's going to be able to prove it.
Right.
So that's my choice. Now, in terms of comments, we got a whole bunch of comments. And this poll, by the way, proved that wide receivers are much more popular than food. Because we got about as many votes in an hour on this poll than we did.
It's also
on
just a
the
fun
food.
position to discuss.
Yeah, it
when
is.
you think about this, is probably the most wide open position for the Redskins.
Some guy named Disco Q5.
Disco.
Yeah, he had a pretty good comment. His comment was, Gruden's offense runs from the inside and builds out. I think Quinn could be a 40 to 50 catch guy, but it begins with Jordan Reed. He puts things up for everybody. Yeah, Rick, you didn't really answer the question, I guess, but that's his comment. E. Blake says Cam Sims. O'Connell has already said this offense with him as the OC will fall into the same fold as previously. Sims has been the most productive wide receiver throughout OTS, as reported by 99% of the beat writers. Part of that is for other reasons, but okay. They're letting Cam Sims get opportunities. Let's see. Redskins Rant writes, Terry McLaurin is going to have the most chances, in my opinion. Special teams ace often gets overlooked, but pairing him with Tress can flip the field. I don't. Okay.
What?
Yeah. Well, he's
Hold
saying.
on.
Yeah, he's saying that pairing him with Tress, meaning Tress way. I think he's saying McLaurin may be good, a good special teamer, meaning when the Redskins are defending the return, is what he's saying.
Defending the return. That's an interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess.
McLaurin isn't a returner. He's a special teams player. True.
He's more of a gunner edge type?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Also on O, he's shifty with deceptive speed, chemistry with Dwayne Haskins. Obviously, that's probably the thing that has most going for him. Wally at Urban Sports Scene chimed into this, who Alex knows, because Alex was on their show a couple months ago. Yeah. Wally writes, it will be Doxson. He will ball because he wants that bag somewhere. Very true. He knows he's going to be a free agent. So that's that. Squirrel Master, who's at Fuzzy Nuts 1998, chimes in with Richardson. He thinks it's Richardson. Ninky4 says Doxson. I think and hope Josh Doxson. Let's see if we can come up with a good comment here. Okay, here is CK2, who's at Lethal Corn Dog. And just as an aside, how on earth do you come up with Lethal Corn Dog? I'd really like to know. So chime in if you're listening to this. Yeah. Chime in with what either of those mean.
I think they're all, Steve. They're all sex jokes. That's all they are. They're all sex jokes.
I guess. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, he writes Quinn because Gruden plays are very slot friendly. Plus, he had a year under his feet to now have a better grasp of the higher speeds in the NFL. I consider Richardson breakout season the year before we sign him, so I don't think he counts for me. Okay, I wish I hadn't read that comment. We have a woman here. This will be. I've got a whole bunch of them. I'm not going to read any more, but we got a woman, so I always have to read the female comments. This is Susan C., who's at Sunflower Susie 2. For sure, Trey Quinn. He's got mad flying, catching, and zigging and zagging skills. So there you go. Thanks to everybody who commented. We could go on and on this week because this really struck a nerve. But that is the poll for this week.
Yeah, so it's kind of what we expected, too.
I also think they're wrong.
Yeah.
I think Cam Sims is obviously the better player. But
They're all wrong. Right.
I'm just afraid. I'm with you. We'll get this. I'll save my.
Yeah, let's get into them. Let's get into all these guys.
Okay, so Paul Richardson. Let's start with Paul Richardson because he's the big money guy. 6 foot, 180 pounds. He was a second-round pick in 2014 by the Seahawks out of Colorado. Came to us last year, obviously.
Got hurt.
Played 7 games, started 4 before he got hurt. And what I'll say here is that his numbers, if you extrapolate them out to 16-game season, track with what he did in Seattle, okay?
So what's that looking at, about 800 yards?
I'm going to tell you. 35 targets, 20 receptions, 262 yards with 7 games, 4 games started. 13.1 yards per reception, 57% catch percentage. His career catch percentage, 58.7. Yards per reception, 13.6. If you extrapolate that out to 16 games, the receptions and yards comes out to 45 receptions, 599 yards. Well, last year for Seattle, 2017 with Seattle, 44 receptions, 703 yards, 55% catch percentage. So it's like he sort of fits into exactly what he did in the past.
But, and that's all well and good, but when I hear those numbers, those are not star numbers. Those
I'm not saying they are. I'm saying this is what it is.
Right.
I agree.
But
I agree with you, Alex.
He doesn't strike me as a guy who's ever going to be that featured 1,000-yard receiver.
I think that the Redskins are going to have to give him every opportunity to do that because they spent so much money on him.
I agree with you there, but I just, I think we made that gamble years ago with Pierre Garçon, where he was like this number 3 on a good team, or like, hey, let's give him a shot, and it worked out well. Mm-hmm. I just don't see it with Richardson. I don't think he's got that nasty factor that Garçon had that made him so dangerous.
And the other thing is too, like, we knew Garçon was a thoroughbred before he even got here. Like he had that dog in him, and he just needed that opportunity that somebody was going to feature him as a number 1 receiver, and he was that until Deshaun Jackson came in and they were able to lighten the load up for each other and complement Jordan Reed.
And they were a great 1-2 punch.
With that being said, Paul Richardson is different in the sense that yes, he has the speed. Yes, he can make tough catches down the field. And he's pretty explosive, but at the same time, like, you can have a lot of those in the NFL. Does that mean they're a number 1 receiver? No. Does that mean that they're a number 2 receiver? Not at all. Like Ted Ginn is not for a good little while in Carolina. I'd give him the benefit of the doubt that he played up to par. He was Cam's number 1 target. However, throughout the majority of his career, he was just a weapon utilized for that offense, for an offense, because he played on multiple teams. He wasn't necessarily a number 1 receiver, but he was a threat. And Paul Richardson can be that here. However, you're paying him to be more than what he was in Seattle. And the question is, can he do that for the Redskins? And I can't for sure say that he can.
I watched a lot of Paul Richardson film. I wrote a piece about him. I watched a good bit of his Seattle film. And I think that what I saw here is, number 1, he has a hands problem. The 57% catch percentage isn't a fluke. He'll have one awful drop a game where you're just going, what are you thinking? It hits you right in the hands, you dropped it, man. I mean, that is Paul Richardson, and that's probably not going to change because that's just some weird genetic thing. Some guys can catch and some guys can't.
Right.
At an NFL level, I'm talking about. Obviously, he's better than us. But
not better than me. I got the hands, baby. I don't drop nothing.
Yeah, you're sitting here on the podcast and not on an NFL franchise, on an NFL team.
That's because he runs a 5.5.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, but so I think Richardson is a fairly complete receiver. He did run the entire route tree in Seattle. He didn't have a lot of opportunity in Seattle because you combine a lot of talented receivers with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who doesn't do his receivers any favors, quite frankly. But by the nature of the way Russell Wilson plays, he holds the ball way too long. He scrambles a lot. And listen, they won a Super Bowl. It works for him, but that's not the type of team that you're going to have a 1,200-yard receiver out of. With him at quarterback and a running team with a guy like Russell Wilson. I think he can be better than that. he can run the entire route tree. He can run the post corners. He can run the dig routes. He can do all that. It's just a matter of catching the ball and getting an opportunity here. He has speed, but he does not have Deshaun Jackson's speed. You know, and he doesn't have that burst like Deshaun had. So I think he can do it. I think it's going to be a combination of health, good quarterback play, and opportunity for him. So I have faith in him that he can be good. I don't know if he's going to become Gary Clark, but he can at least be a solid pro receiver.
I see him as more of one of those guys you want in an ensemble cast. I just don't. The numbers that he's in, what, his sixth season now?
Yeah,
fifth season?
No. Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. This would be the sixth season coming up.
Guys don't tend to blow up in their, by now. I think he kind of is where he is. He'll be a good 700-yard maybe guy, and a team needs that. Our team is desperate for every bit of help we can get in the passing game, so that's fine. He just needs to stay healthy, and we need to find somebody else to play on the other side of the ball.
I just think that the Redskins see Paul Richardson as a guy who can be better than he was in Seattle, and a guy who was held back by the nature of the Seattle offense. I think that's what they saw in him. Because, for sure his numbers... I don't know
if I agree with that.
I mean, for sure his numbers in Seattle did not say $40 million contract, for sure.
No.
But I think he can be better than that. So, I mean, I think he can be a good receiver. I do. I hate the term. Generally speaking, I've always hated the term number one receiver because I don't really know what that means. Mm-hmm. I get it, but I just don't know what that means. So I hate to classify people like that. But I think he can. Listen, can he get to 1,000 yards? I think sure he can. Just a matter of the offense.
I think in theory any receiver can.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for route running ability, hands, and just kind of inherent ability to catch the ball. I mean, there is something to that, and I think Paul can do it. He's going to drop balls, though. I think he's never going to be Jordan Reed when it comes to hands, ever. That's just not him.
He'll never be the 100-catch guy.
So who do we have next up on this?
We got to go Josh Doxson, man.
Okay.
How can we not?
And do you want to talk about the thing you sent, Jamal, before we got started? The news story?
Sure. Let me bring it up right quick. Here we go. Last week, what's the date? I'm looking for the date. 1 second. It is the 13th. So last Saturday, Josh Doxson was interviewed by Ben Standig of The Athletic. And there's a short little snippet. Unfortunately, we plan to. We'll end up getting The Athletic, and we'll be able to go further in depth. But we have enough content here to understand the tone of the conversation and basically the perspective or tone that Doxson was speaking in as well. So, with that being said, Josh Doxson has a lot to prove in year 5, whether it be for the Redskins or just for him trying to make his name in free agency, make a market for himself. And throughout the course of the summer, he's stated multiple times he has nothing to prove, and we're still dumbfounded by what he means by that, and he refuses to go in depth into him saying he has nothing to prove. Doxson was interviewed by Standig, and there's a few things that they talked about, and basically I can just sum it up by saying Doxson believes he has great genetics. And
yeah, he says that like 5 times in the interview.
5 or 6 times in the interview with Ben Standig, and some of the takeaways, it really does point to that. It's hard to really get a lot out of Josh Doxson, and it seems like based off this interview alone, you kind of understand like just quite frankly, like why he's so weird, and why he comes across as weird and not being able to understand him. One of the things that he was asked by Ben Standig is, when did you realize, hold on 1 second, when did you realize that you were going to be a professional sports player, or why did you,
NFL star,
all that type of stuff. And the first thing he said was genetics. It was a one-word answer. And then he asked on the field, when did you believe that you were capable enough of being a pro player? Genetics and work.
Right.
Of course, and Standick tried to, pinpoint specific answers to get him to talk a little bit more, and you're not getting much out of Josh Doctson. And one of the things that, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna let you finish, and I was gonna say, doesn't that kind of just show you everything wrong with how his play hasn't improved?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, okay. So I went back and watched Josh Doctson film a while ago because I really wanted to be sure that we're giving this guy an opportunity. Because after all, I mean, he's playing with the likes of Mark Sanchez and Josh Johnson, right? I mean, you could have put Art Monk out there, and Art wouldn't have had great numbers with that kind of quarterbacking. And there's been problems. And so are we really giving him a fair shot? Well, here's what I saw. First of all, numbers-wise, he did put up his best season as a pro last year. 78 targets, 44 receptions, 532 yards, 2 touchdowns, 56% catch rate, which is better. And his career numbers his 3-year career numbers look like a good 1 year for top receivers. 81 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. Here's what I saw in Josh Doctson. He's a guy who can do one thing. He can outjump everybody. And that's it. He has long arms and he's tall. He's not that fast. He's 4.5 speed, but if you watch it on film, he does not have any burst at all. He cannot out accelerate anybody. Okay, you put him one-on-one on an edge. Most quarterbacks drool over that. Well, the problem is Doctson isn't going to outrun anybody. He's not going to accelerate past anybody. You have to rely on him on jump ball, which is not a good way to live.
He doesn't make any sharp cuts when you watch him.
Well, I'm getting to that. Yeah. I'm getting to that. A quarterback does not want to rely on a 50-50 ball, no matter what. I mean, I know that's a term that's in vogue, but let's go with a higher percentage pass to somebody who's open,
Right.
But Josh Doctson, like Alex said, does not run good patterns, okay? He cannot cut sharply. He doesn't. His moves, he doesn't use his footwork well to fool corners. Okay, he cannot. A lot of corners, the way they plant their feet, the way they juke, that's how you get open on double moves and stuff. Josh cannot do that, and so he really has one gimmick. He's a one-trick pony. He can jump, and that's it. And so I just don't think. And yeah, he's odd, and I don't know what to say about his work ethic because the stuff that.
And this is fair because he's been needled throughout his time in DC, but. I give him the benefit of the doubt, or not even the benefit of the doubt. I cut him some slack because he has been needled and just beaten down by the "Are you hurt?" question a million times. But he comes across as annoyed by the DC media, annoyed by the DC media, and just that's one of the reasons why I also think he contributes to these piss poor answers that he gives in interviews, and as opposed to promoting yourself and having an opportunity to show that another team is going to be very happy that they signed you because you're going into free agency. You just don't help yourself in the off season, and when the season comes up, he'll be interviewing a lot more because he has to get his face out there. And the question is, what are you gonna do? Like especially if your play isn't up to par.
And I don't think Jay Gruden feels any need to play him. In the past 3 years, yes, because he's a number 1 draft pick. But Gruden, number 1, this is the last year of his contract. Gruden flat out said it. A month ago, said, I don't know how many balls, they're going to be there for Josh.
Right. He's got to try and figure out how to get balls to other guys. Yeah. How's he going to get them to Doctson?
They don't feel any need to hand him a job anymore. I think Josh is going to want to do well. And so like what Wally said, Josh wants the bag, from Urban Sports Team. Yeah, I agree with that. I truly don't think he has the talent. Because if you've been with, pro coaching for 3 years and you still can't cut right, cut well, you still don't know how to use your footwork, you're not going to all of a sudden your speed isn't going to, your burst is not going to improve. I just don't think he can do it. And I watch him. If you want positive to end my spiel on it, I mean the positive here is he knows he has to do well, and so like Wally said, he's going to try, and maybe he can at least maybe he can bring it out of himself.
The team for one season after you move on after this year. If you can help us out a lot, help us get into playoff positioning, we'll appreciate you. And you always have a staying fan base. Like it's people who will root for you this year after you score your first touchdown and be like, I told y'all not to give up on Josh Doctson. Like, look, he's had 3 years.
Right.
We'll be rooting for you this year. We need you. And at the same time, we hope that you can continue to develop. I don't even know why I'm talking like Josh Doctson is listening, but I hope he can continue to develop because look, truth be told, he has a lot going against him.
He might be.
And it's hard. Like you're at the point now where the Redskins drafted 2 receivers this year. Last year they had 2 receivers who were on IR. But they're coming back now, seemingly fully healthy. You got Paul Richardson coming back healthy. You have competition, and they really do not need to play you at the number 1. Or you don't have to be at the number 1 in their depth chart. You can be a reserve role if you have to.
Right. I think what kills me about Doctson is, you're talking about a guy who doesn't have everything, but he has enough of a particular skill set where he should have carved out a good role for himself by now. He should be the go-to target in the red zone. He should be the go-to target on those, 3rd and 5, kind of, we just need the first down type plays.
Because you know where a guy like this could do well? It's on the third down, like exactly what you just said. On the third downs, this guy, he's not a great route runner, but he's big and he can jump, run dig routes and wheel routes.
Even the occasional inside slant, a guy that size should be able to
and so
be doing an
can
inside
just
slant, making a mismatch with the linebacker,
out muscle and out jump guys, and become a possession receiver. I mean, you could do that, and he hasn't done that.
Right, and not everyone in the NFL is a every tool wide receiver, but there's always space for guys who have those defined roles, and he's just never even gotten himself to that point, which is what irritates me.
All right. So who do we have? Who do we have?
I guess Quinn.
We got to go to the Apostle Trey Quinn next. Okay, 6 foot 200 pounds. So he's a little bit bigger than you might think, because I kind of have an image in my head of him as a shrimp, but he's really not. He's really Jameson Crowder's size, is what he is. SMU.
Yeah. Last
year, just for the record, played in 3 games, started 10 targets, 9 receptions, 75 yards, 1 touchdown. So that's what he did. It must be mentioned that he started out at LSU, transferred to SMU. His last year at SMU was unbelievable. Okay, led the NCAA in receptions, 114 receptions, over 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. He did absolutely everything. That having been said, this is the American Conference at SMU. So the competition is less. He got hurt last year. Jay Gruden has extolled the virtues of Trey Quinn since day one.
Right.
We make fun of it, because Jay seems to lock on to certain players and he loves them. Trey is the guy. Trey has shown a little bit of an attitude in a good way and kind of a fire out there when he's playing, which is something that, frankly, the Redskins could need. It seems to me he's the number 1 guy on the depth chart in the slot position right now by far.
Right.
So he's going to have an opportunity.
And I agree with you there, and good luck to him on that opportunity side. The other thing we shouldn't underestimate, though, is that we desperately needed him on special teams for punt returns last year. Because when he was in there, he was getting 5-10 yards on a return. Without him, though, we were doing nothing on our return.
Well, I can tell you about returns. He had 4 returns, 52 yards average. That's punt returns. 4 returns, 52 yards, 13 yards per return, which is far and away way better than anybody else we've had.
Everyone else just fair caught the ball. No one else did anything.
Yeah, I said Greg Strowman was just back there fair catching, so you wasn't getting nothing from anybody else.
Yeah, I think he maybe got 2 yards on 2 returns or something.
Yeah, and the funny thing was he didn't do much of returning in college either. So, he had 5-6 punt returns in college. So it's weird.
Well, but he's effective at it.
Yeah, he's effective, no doubt. So, if you watch his film, there's no pro film on Trey Quinn, basically because he got hurt. If you watch him at SMU, which I did, this guy has legit NFL hands, okay? He is not one who ever lets the ball get into his body. That's the first thing young receivers do wrong. Like, when you start playing football at a peewee level and a high school level, the first thing to tell receivers, because I got told this, don't let the ball get into your body because it bounces all over the place and you won't catch it. Trey Quinn never does that. He's got great hands. He's a quality route runner. All the stuff Josh Doctson can't do, like Josh Doctson can't set the corners up effectively. He can't cut. Trey Quinn can do all these things.
Juke.
He can do all of those things. Trey's downside is that athletically he's limited by NFL standards. He's way better than us, right. But by NFL standards, he's not that fast. He can't. He doesn't have a ton of leap, a ton of burst. But he's got a lot of things going for him, and this is what Jay Gruden likes about him. If I see this and I'm just some idiot on the radio, Jay Gruden has seen all this 10 times more than I have. So I think Quinn has a ton of potential, especially in the slot when you can kind of make up for his lack of burst by giving him a few extra yards.
An ability to get shifty to maybe
Right. So that's, I don't know,
space.
Jamal, do you see something different? I know you've watched a lot of film on these receivers. Do you see anything different than what I saw?
No, not really. Quinn is a shifty guy. His first his two most productive games were the back-to-backs, Houston and I believe Dallas, and those were something. I mean, you wasn't really getting a lot of production yardage-wise, but you got a lot of catches, 9 catches for 72 yards and 1 touchdown, and that just shows you like his ability to first off establish a trust factor or reliability factor with the quarterback, whoever it was. Colt, yeah, Colt was the guy during those periods. It's crazy that I had to think about it with all the quarterbacks that we had. So yeah, just to establish a trust factor for a quarterback that's big for a slot receiver and somebody who can be trusted with his hands and can get open. And that's just important. That's all I really had to say about Trey Quinn, though. But there's not really much you can add on
I wrote
level.
2 more things. I wrote 2 more things about him in my piece from last year on him. What I saw at SMU, he does something Deshaun Jackson did really well. Trey Quinn will appear to be loafing. But he's not loafing. He's setting up corners. Like Deshaun Jackson did it really well. He would just kind of what looked like, by Deshaun Jackson standards, he's kind of loafing, not running, and then he would boom take off, and he's just gone. Trey Quinn doesn't have anywhere near that speed, but he does the same thing. He'll disappear to kind of jog off the line of scrimmage, and then
change gears.
Change gears. And the other thing about receivers is some of these guys just kind of have a knack for getting open. It's a weird intangible thing. They just can kind of see the field and they just know where to go. And Trey is one of these guys. At SMU, he just sort of had a knack for always being open, and it was more than just he knows how to run routes. He just sort of knew where to be, and I think Trey is one of these guys. So I have really high hopes for Trey. That he can overcome the stigma of this Mr. Irrelevant thing. And do things. And we've seen little guys out of little schools do well before. I mean, some guy named Ricky Sanders, played the same kind of role. So, like a guy like Julian Edelman up in New England. You give him a good quarterback, and look what happens. Right. So I'm excited about Trey Quinn.
I'm not. Going to discount him. I just always keep in mind he was a Mr. Irrelevant pick, and the success rate for guys like that is astronomically low.
I mean, the last person that you can really think of at that position is Colston. At least I can think of. But I agree. It's hard, but when you have somebody like Jay Gruden and the offensive staff who can establish, who are interested in developing you, they're not going to cut your time short. They're not going to just throw you by the wayside, and you're able to prove yourself that you can actually hang in the NFL or hang with this team. They're going to develop you and make sure that your success is their success as well. So Trey Quinn is in a good situation, but it's hard.
And I'll say this, though. I think part of the reason why he was Mr. Irrelevant was that he was at SMU. SMU is the opposite of a football program. Okay, they never recovered from the SMU death penalty suspension, 15 years ago, whatever it was. They never did. And then, he was only there a year. He played, they're in the American Conference, or is it the American Conference? Whatever that
American Athletic Conference.
Thank you, American Athletic Conference. So nobody really knew who he was.
Right.
I think if you put Trey Quinn at a big-time school with a big-time quarterback, put him at, like, Clemson, and you'd be hearing a lot more about him. That's all. So let's move on. Terry McLaurin, Ohio State. We're going to go with him next because he and Dwayne Haskins obviously know each other already.
Right.
6 foot, 210 pounds. This dude is a burner. This is the first thing you need to understand about Trey Quinn. Just a speed demon. Okay. Ran a 4.35 40, 37-inch vertical. if he averaged 20 yards per reception last year at Ohio State. 20.
Right.
That's like Deshaun Jackson level territory. Jamal, let's kick it to you because you did didn't you do a YouTube breakdown about McLaurin?
I did. I haven't visited that in some time now, but I'll try to do my best in remembering what I saw from Terry. First thing first, though, in the rookie minicamp, like he was one of those guys where and for the longest, it was like a couple plays where I recorded him and I didn't even realize like I was recording Terry, but he was burning defensive backs. These are guys that they're not.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we know it's rookie minicamp. But just noticing the speed difference.
Right, they're Arena Football League level guys in there.
Or just not even cut it for the pro league.
Not even that.
But you just see these guys getting burnt by Terry, and you're just like, if you guys that's listening can see what I just did, like my jaw dropped, and that's my reaction when you see.
And you're just raising your hands up.
Yeah,
like,
you can't. Now I'm looking at the video feedback. You can't even see my face, but my jaw dropped. My jaw dropped, and that's what was going on when I saw him live. My jaw didn't necessarily drop, but it dropped in my head. So these are things that you see when you look at Terry, and one of the things that I liked with Terry is just that he was a physical player and he did a lot of things to help out the offense, and he was active in the run game. He was able to block for it on the edge. You can put him in line or set him in motion and have him chip a defensive back. He'll pancake him. He can do that. He's capable of blocking on screen plays. And one of the things that I really liked about him, I think he had to work on his press a little, getting off the press releases, and working on that type of stuff. But he was just a physical player with the ball in his hands, and he was physical when the ball is thrown to him. He's able to fight for the ball, and that's one of the things that with a speed guy, the stigma is that they're just more like a finesse or a diva type guy. But he's a gritty player.
Imagine him on the crackback blocks on the
it's impressive. I can't wait to see
well.
it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, it is. All that stuff that Jamal said, it's what I saw. I mean, he just flat out ran past people in college routinely. And Haskins has got the huge arm and can hit him.
It was not just deep routes, though. He was doing a lot of going across. That's where he made a lot of his yards.
Yeah, I think he's a complete receiver. Another guy we have very high hopes for.
Right.
Very high hopes for. So that's Terry McLaurin. We've got a bunch of.
I'm going to go ahead and peace out, but Steve and Alex will be finishing. So you guys take care, and I will talk to you all.
Yeah. Jamal told us he had something he had to go do. So
I can't imagine what's more important than the Hog Sty, but
look, man, you guys know you guys come first. But
don't worry, man. We got it.
We got it. Yeah. One thing I want to just say about the whole Terry McLaurin thing before we move to the next guy. I am shocked that this doesn't happen more often, that teams don't draft a quarterback and find somebody he played with in college just for some comfort level.
Sense. It kind of makes sense.
I know maybe they don't have a guy like Jones at Duke. Duke doesn't have any NFL caliber receivers usually.
Funny you say that because we're going to get to one in a minute.
Well, yeah, I know, but that was kind of me setting one up.
Yeah. Part of it is that just like logistically, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I understand. But I would always try for it if I were an NFL team.
If you could, yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to Kelvin Harmon next.
All right.
6'2", 215 pounds out of North Carolina State. Ran a 4.6 40 at the combine, 32-inch vertical, so he doesn't have the big athletic measurables. In college, now he had a good quarterback, remember. At North Carolina State, he has an NFL quarterback in Finley.
Yeah.
81 receptions last year, 1,186 yards, 14.6 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns. In his career, 177 receptions, over 2,600 yards. What I saw, Kelvin Harmon, number one, I saw him beat Jimmy Moreland one-on-one on film. Kelvin is a guy who a lot of people said was
drafted late.
Yeah, thank you. Drafted late. If we asked Mark Bullock, our buddy Mark Bullock, about this, and Mark said, well, he was drafted a little late, but not a ton late. I don't know, I don't know what to say about Kelvin Harmon because he's kind of an enigma to me. He's got these measurables that don't scream great receiver. But at the same time, I saw him do good things in college. And I think he's a better receiver than his numbers would indicate. And not like he's not going to have an opportunity here, here in D.C. So I think he's kind of a wait-and-see guy. I don't know how much he's going to play the first year or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the tough part with a lot of these guys who are lower on the depth chart that we're getting to now. Like, when we go through those top 4 guys, you assume all of them are going to see some good playing time right off the bat. But, who's going to be number 5 and number 6 on the roster? And Harmon's probably going to be one of those. I'd be surprised if he's, doesn't make the roster since he's a
6th-round draft pick. I mean, he's a 6th-round pick. It wouldn't be all that surprising to see him on a practice squad.
I guess not. But we are talking about a guy who had a good career in college. And I agree with you, though. Like, when you talk about McLaurin, you're like, okay, he's a speed guy. He fits that role. We know how we can use him right away. When you talk about a guy who's big, like Josh Doxson or Cam Sims, who we'll get to, you as a fan and me as a fan, even though we're not, coaches, we can envision how to use that skill set right away.
Right.
Harmon's more of a, he's not small, but he's not big. He's not fast, but he's not slow. So where does he, what role does he fit in?
That's why I'm struggling with him too. That's why I'm struggling with him a little bit
but
too.
But frankly, that's what I always kind of look at with Paul Richardson. Like I know he's got better speed than Harmon, but he's not Deshaun Jackson fast.
No, but nobody is Deshaun Jackson fast. I mean, Paul Richardson's a legit low 4.4, high 4.3 guy.
Right.
I mean, he's not Deshaun Jackson, but he's fast. He's a lot faster than Kelvin Harmon. I think Kelvin is a guy who's going to have to develop. It was definitely great value. I also hate the term value pick, as you know, Alex. But I mean, but he was a great value.
It's worth picking up a guy like that in the 6th round.
I was surprised he dropped that long. Here's something I didn't know. You ready for Kelvin Harmon trivia?
Sure.
Where was he born?
I would have no idea.
I didn't know this. He was born in Liberia.
Cool.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, we have 2 Liberian receivers, on the team now. We'll get to another one in a minute. But born in Liberia and moved to New Jersey when he was 4. Didn't know that about him. Yeah.
Oh, where was Pierre Garçon from?
He's from Haiti.
Haiti. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Okay, so that's Kelvin Harmon. I think more so than Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has a specific gift that I think, and he's got the built-in connection with Dwayne Haskins. So I think if you rate the 2. I think I'd give McLaurin a bigger chance of making a difference in year 1, but
he's also a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, and he's a 3rd-round pick.
Right.
And Kelvin Harmon has gifts, but I think we're going to have to wait and see kind of where he fits. Robert Davis, 6'3", 210 pounds out of Georgia State. He is basically Georgia's the best player ever to come out of Georgia State, certainly an offensive player. He's got what attracted my attention to him originally was he had a 41-inch vertical leap and ran a 4.40. He's got all measurables through the roof, and he put up just massive numbers at Georgia State. Over 3,000, almost 3,400 yards in 4 years, 222 catches, 17 touchdowns, averaging 15.3 yards per attempt, and that's as a number 1 receiver, not like the 9-route deep guy. Davis got hurt. Real shame. What I heard about Davis, off the record, was that his injury was a lot more serious than anybody thought.
Right.
And career-threatening kind of serious. I hope that's wrong, and I only heard that from one person, so don't take it as gospel, but that's what I heard. And, he had a broken tibia, torn ACL, PCL, LCL. He had a very serious injury, and I don't know if hopefully he comes back because he's got a lot of potential. If you watch him on film, he's a guy who needed help with route running. I'm not sure he doesn't have Trey Quinn level hands, but he's got so many physical gifts, and he's a hard worker. He's got a great attitude. I love Robert Davis. I just hope this injury doesn't have a negative impact on his career.
Right. Well, when you talk about Robert Davis, you and I, we kind of agree on I don't like the who's a number 1 guy. But I think we're both you're a speed receiver or you're a position receiver.
Kind of, yeah.
Davis, to me, just because of his height, I put him more in that possession. He would probably be competing with Doxson more than like a Trey Quinn for that
See,
spot.
I looked at him differently because he's got so much physical gifts. I look at him, honestly, as a poor man's Terrell Owens.
Okay.
He's that's my comp. Terrell Owens is 6'3". Terrell Owens ran a 4.40. He had the humongous vertical leap. He was from a small school, and had to prove himself. I'm not saying Robert
That's
Davis.
What's gonna happen.
I mean, Terrell Owens is a Hall of Fame receiver. Okay, I'm just saying that's the comp to me of what I see in a perfect world. Like Plato. If we can go into philosophy, like Plato had this idea that there's an ideal plane, right?
Right.
And so
Utopia.
Robert Davis's ideal plane is Terrell Owens. That's what he could get to if everything goes well. His injury doesn't affect him. He gets his opportunity. His speed isn't affected, and he improves his route running.
Just don't do sit-ups in your driveway.
Yeah, and don't become a drug addict, and do sit-ups in your driveway and become weird and all that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't strike me as a weird guy. But anyway, I think that's the ideal Robert Davis is Terrell Owens. Now, the realistic Robert Davis is something less than that, but I think he's got so much potential. I just hope his injury is less than what I was told it was.
Yeah, I remember when you first mentioned that to the rest of us, and I was like, that sounds awful.
Yeah, really terrible. Real shame.
All right, so can we go to the next guy? Because I think
Cam Sims.
When it comes to Redskins super fans, you are there's two little subcults of the wide receivers. There's Robert Davis Colt fans, and then there's Cam Sim Colt. And I'm Cam Sims Colt all the way. I am
too.
I'm very
Cam
excited
Sims.
to see if he can make it in this league.
I'm Team Cam, too. Don't believe me. 6'5", 215 pounds out of Alabama, obviously. Did almost nothing in Alabama. Had 41 receptions in 4 years, 467 yards, 1.4 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns. He got hurt last year also. Obviously, it was an ankle with him. I watched a lot of his Alabama film. Alabama
Didn't take
misuses.
long because he's only got a few catches.
Here's a hint for everybody watching. You can't watch the catch. You have to watch every play. Right. And Alabama just horribly misused him because they just have a lot of guys. Here's what they did. Here's what Alabama did with him. First of all, they played him out of the slot, which is weird for a 6'5" guy. But they just had him basically sit and wait for a flat pass. 75% of the time, that's what he's doing.
Were they kind of trying to use him like a weird tight end thing there?
No, they just didn't have any other room for him. He was playing with Calvin Ridley.
That's odd.
He's playing with Calvin Ridley and a couple of other NFL receivers. I think truly with Cam, that's sort of the only way he could get on the field. And so most of the time, they didn't even have him run patterns. He would just turn and sit and wait for a flat pass.
Right.
And he had Jalen Hurts, who sucks. Jalen Hurts is a bad quarterback.
Right.
By NFL, he's not an NFL quarterback.
It's the running thing with Alabama. You've got this great dynasty, never had a quarterback.
Yeah. And he didn't have an NFL arm. He would run here, there, and everywhere. He didn't do his receivers any favors, and Calvin Ridley was his target. So Cam got zero attention in Alabama. The rumor was that we heard was that the Redskins first noticed him at the Alabama Pro Day. Mm-hmm. He lit the world on fire in training camp last year. He is so much more than just a dude out of the slot waiting on a flat pass. So much more. He can run the entire route.
He's gigantic. I mean, huge. You know me. I'm in love with any wide receiver who's like 6'5". I want that big body guy.
Yeah. He's not hugely fast, but he's got good hands. He's a high effort guy, runs good routes, he did drop one really bad drop in one of the
preseason games.
Yeah, last year. But okay, that happens to everybody. But I think he can. His body type sort of screams X receiver,
right?
But I think he could probably run a Z also. I don't think he's a slot guy.
No. He is built like Plesko and all the other famous big men, where you want him to be your red zone target, first down guy. Imagine
running a fade pattern to a guy who can actually catch it.
Yeah. We've only ever seen it work like once in Jay Gruden's tenure.
I think Cam Sims is Josh Doxson's replacement.
I agree. 100%.
It's just a matter of health with him. Is he healthy? And and can he come in and be what he was last year? Mm-hmm. That's the. But I love Cam Sims. I'm like you. I'm a big Cam Sims fan.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anything else to say about him?
No. I just get healthy. I would be. My dream scenario for the season is Cam Sims replaces Josh Doxson entirely on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the future here in a minute, and we need to power through the rest of these because we've.
We got like a bunch of other.
Yeah, okay. We're going to hit Brian Quick real fast. He's back, 6'3", 215 pounds, second-round pick by the Rams in 2012. He's basically been a bust in terms of that.
But he's been our depth guy for 3 years
Jay
now.
Gruden seems to like him. As a Redskin, if anybody's wondering, played 17 games, started for 11 targets, 9 receptions, 94 yards. That's what he's done as a Redskin. Certainly he's a temporary fix at best.
He's insurance.
Yeah, that's Brian Quick. Jehu Chesson, 6'2", 204 pounds, out of Michigan. He was a fourth-round pick by the Chiefs in 2017. Came to us last year. Got a weirdly huge role, it seemed like, once everybody got hurt last year.
Right.
But he was a big special teamer, and that's where his role is. Mm-hmm. Played in 12 games, only had 2 targets, 1 reception, 7 yards. But it seemed like I was seeing him in every play, and it was because he was on all those special teams plays.
Right.
He does have some physical gifts. Ran a sub 4.5 40, for a 35-inch vertical. So the coaches seem to like Jehu. And by the way, he's our other Liberian. He was born in Monrovia, Liberia. So he was the other one I was talking about earlier.
I like international flair on my team. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Liberia. So anyway, the coaches seem to like him, so I'd give him a pretty decent chance of making the roster, just because he stepped up when nobody else was literally nobody else was healthy.
And you do need guys for special teams. So
Yeah.
if he wants to stand out there, we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Jehu Chesson.
Right.
Darvin Kidsey, 6 foot, 180 pounds, undrafted free agent. He's played in 2 games, 2 targets, 1 reception, 8 yards. He was on the practice squad basically all last year.
Yeah.
He was at North Texas.
Tiny guy.
6 foot.
Yeah, but also only 180.
Yeah, he's a tiny guy. He was at North Texas, and he transferred to Texas Southern. He got arrested for a hit and run in January 2016. So hopefully he's improved
In
character
in
that regard. Yeah.
Staying out of trouble.
What I think, if you want to know about Darvin Kidsey, because you probably didn't watch him at all, he's got decent speed. He's sub 4.5 40. He's very agile, pretty decent route runner, has potential. He just needs an opportunity. He may be end up on the practice squad again this year. So that's Darvin Kidsey. Okay, we've got 2 left. This next dude I'm excited about, Steven Sims Jr. out of Kansas. 5'10",
Really, you're excited about Steven Sims Jr.?
Oh my God!
Is it because his name's Steven?
No, it's not. It's because I was watching. I can't remember who I was watching. Might have been Jordan Brailford. Can't remember. And I kept seeing this receiver on Kansas, just torching everybody, just like burning people, burning corners. And then I realized it was a Redskin, Steven Sims. Oh, my God. This dude only ran a 4.5 40, apparently, at the Kansas Pro Day. I think he had a bad day. He is a burner, man. Playmaker, like Tyreek Hill comp. The ideal plane for Steven Sims is Tyreek Hill, not the scumbag wife beater.
Right.
I'm talking about on the field. That would be the ideal plane for Steven Sims. He is a playmaker. And the problem with him is he's at Kansas. And Kansas is a horrible team with the quarterback at Kansas, just awful. The offensive line was terrible. They're just getting annihilated. In that game I watched of Sims, they were just getting demolished. So he didn't have any opportunities.
They're in the middle of nowhere, so no one watches them anyway.
Yeah, and they're in the Big 12, So he didn't put up any numbers really at Kansas to speak of. In 4 years, 214 receptions, 2,500 yards. That's not none. I shouldn't say that. He was their number one. He was their best player by a long shot. This guy, if he gets his opportunity, could come out of nowhere. If you want a sleeper in the Redskins receiving corps, it's Steven Sims Jr. Book it now. Watch for it.
Okay.
I'm assuming you have nothing to add else.
No, because I haven't watched any of Steven Sims.
Yeah, man, this dude is a playmaker. Bar none.
And he's got no relation to Cam, I assume.
No, not that I know of, at least.
Right.
They share a last name. Okay, last guy, T.J. Romming out of Duke.
Yes.
Now, T.J. Romming is huge. 5'6", 170 pounds.
Yeah. Do you want to know when I was 5'6"? Like
8th
fourth grade.
See, you're a lot taller than me, though. So
I'm only 5'11". I just hit 5'6" by fourth grade.
I thought you were 6 foot. Anyway, so T.J. Romming's only. I'm kidding. Obviously, he's not big. He's He's 5'6", 170 pounds. 75 receptions last year, 811 yards. Had an NFL quarterback, and Daniel Jones was a quarterback. The book on him, he ran about a mid 4.40, so like 4.43 to 4.540. Mm-hmm. He's another guy who's explosive. He has to be if he's going to be that little, dangerous, agile, shifty. Can maybe be a punt returner. I think they may give him a shot at punt returning because he did have 38 punt returns in college. So we'll see. His problem is hands. Apparently, I'm not going to pretend like I watched a ton of TJ Romming, but I did watch a lot of Duke. I just wasn't focusing on TJ Romming.
Okay.
So, I mean, he doesn't have the greatest hands in the world, but we'll see. I really think they're going to maybe try him at punt return.
Maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of sick of the, tiny punt returners. That's just my...
Hey, I mean, he's the 12th guy on the roster.
I know.
I mean, it's fine. But, I mean, we'll see, what happens. In terms of salary and stuff, okay, so
Doxson's the only one with a big salary, right?
Well, him and Doxson. Doxson is at a touch under $3.2 million. Paul's at $7.2 million. All the rest of these guys are min salary guys.
Right.
So that's the salary cap for receivers. We're going to probably keep 5 or 6. So do we want to take a stab? I think we should.
I'll give you my stab because I kind of. All right, so I'll give you my top 5, and because this is where I'm kind of at. My top 5 that I would keep right now, just if everyone's healthy, it's going to be Paul Richardson, Trey Quinn, McLaurin, Harmon, and Cam Sims. Those are my top 5. I don't honestly feel like Josh Doxson deserves to be kept on this team based off of what we've seen so far. But he might get that 6th slot. We haven't seen enough of Steve Sims or Robert Davis.
Right.
I can't tell you, but to me that that 6th spot, it's up for grabs between everyone else.
So who do you think it is? You said Richardson, Quinn, McLaurin, Sims, and Harmon?
Yeah, I think
those
would be 5 guys I would keep.
I'm going to substitute Doxson for Harmon.
Okay.
I think Doxson makes the roster. I can see. I don't think you're crazy though. I can see a scenario if he just blows it that they can cut him.
Right.
I mean, if they wanted, they would.
It's not like there's dead money in the future at this point.
It would be a zero-sum game. Basically, if they cut him now, and if they did him as a post June 1 trade, they could save a little bit of money this year and have it roll over. But I don't know. I think Doxson makes the roster somehow. I don't think they're really ready to put Harmon on the roster. So I think it's Richardson, Quinn, McLaurin, Sims, Doxson at 5. And if one of these kids really balls out and shows something, they could keep 6.
Yeah.
And the most likely options, I mean, if Davis is healthy, I mean, he'd be on the top of my list for that.
Well,
but
to me, it's a question of what skill set do you need an extra of? Because if you got, and we both agree Cam Sims is there, we both agree Richardson's there, McLaurin's there, and Quinn's there. So that gives you your speed guy, your big possession guy. Richardson is kind of like your all-around player, and Quinn's your slot guy. I guess it's a question of, do you want an extra slot guy? Do you want an extra – because no one else is a real burner left off the list at that point. But
I mean, if you want to go down to, like Steven Sims is a burner, but you can't count on him to be on the roster.
Because of his size, he's more of a slot than an outside.
Yeah.
So it's a
Robert
question of what
Davis
they
would
like.
be the guy. Robert Davis would be the guy.
Probably.
If you want big guy with speed, it's just with him, it's a matter of health.
He's probably more balanced than the others.
Yeah. In terms of starters, let's get starters real fast, too. I'm going to say, obviously, Richardson's a starter.
Right.
Trey Quinn, if you want to, he's going to be the starting slot guy.
Right.
Richardson is probably the Z receiver. And so on the outside, Doxson will probably start the year, I think, as a starter. But I don't think it's going to take very long for Cam Sims to overcome him.
Well,
and start.
I'll give you an even bolder prediction.
Okay.
Just based off of what Haskins does well, he's best with speed guys.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we see McLaurin end up starting opposite Richardson, and you just go with 2 more Z-style guys going deep, opening up the field more.
It's possible. It's possible. Of all the position groups, I think this is the one that's most fascinating to me because
it's
so
a lot
many
of fun
questions.
to hypothetical that group. Yeah.
We could talk for 2 hours about this and still
we almost have.
How long are we? We've
We're
totally
at
lost all
1:30.
track of time. Okay, we need to end this.
Yeah. Wide receivers is deep.
Yeah, for those of you who hung on this long, we appreciate it.
Yeah. All right,
If you have.
I want to thank everyone who is still in and listening. Even Jamal quit after about an hour, so
we even lost our own member.
That should tell you something about the wide receiver group.
But before we sign off, though, okay, so training camp starting this week. We'll have a training camp. Written training camp, summary thing printed, but we are going to be at training camp starting next week, so we will have great stuff from you. Keep an eye out on the site for some live audio and video and whatnot from player interviews.
Yeah, I'm going to have to record some interviews. You know how much I love doing that.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's Alex's favorite thing.
Yeah. So we'll be recording interviews at training camp. We'll be talking to players. I'm not sure when we're going to do a show. We're going to have to figure that out.
Well, we'll talk about that offline. Yeah.
All right, but thanks everybody for listening, and stick with us. Things are about to get fun again. All right.
I didn't realize we went on that long.